I want to talk to you about my friend Charlie Crawford. He's a 10-time NFR qualifier.
Charlie Crawford, time to just shake it out and win. Got it on him fast, set
there
up.
We are.
Here's a day
nice
money
run.
lead. You betcha 3-8.
That's an absolute perfect run. Timing was perfect from the time the first swing is up. He's got the control. Charlie made it happen by being timed up with his horse with the steer, and being able to not just rope, but to pick that steer's head up without changing the momentum for the heeler at all.
We know his beautiful wife, Jackie, all three of their beautiful children, the founder of the Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, which this year will exceed $1 million raised for military and first responders. I've said it 1,000 times. Charlie, it's time to rope, nod and ride, whip and spur. I want to welcome you to the Charlie Crawford Podcast. Let's ride.
Hello, everybody. So I don't know if you've kept up with some of the latest things going on, but interest rates have lowered. And so what does that mean? What does it mean for our industry? What does it mean for houses and things like that if we're shopping to, we're in the market? So I thought it'd be a great idea to get Ryan Studdard. He's a good buddy of mine. He's the owner and broker of Oak Ash Realty. Ryan, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for having me here today.
I appreciate it. So, what I like about this, we had Brandon Carroll with BC Insurance on a couple weeks ago, and to me, to be able to understand what's going on with someone who's familiar with the industry. You grew up roping calves, you said, for a really long time. Now you're a team roper. You're in the industry. And so tell me a little bit about you. Am I correct that you used to be a calf roper? Now you mainly just heel?
So I grew up mainly calf roping, as you mentioned. And then when I got into high school, pursuing the all-around was a big deal. And so all throughout high school and college rodeos, I did all three timed events. I roped calves, steer wrestled, and team roped. But the primary focus was definitely on calf roping.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I practiced all the time. That's what I pursued and did the others to try to accumulate all-around points.
Because you've been over here to the house healing, and you got a really cool horse. And
thank you.
It seems pretty cool, too, that, you send me videos all the time, like with you and your kid roping together. And that's kind of the one thing that's real romantic about team roping, in my opinion, is the fact that it's also a good family sport.
It absolutely is. And he's finally getting old enough to be able to do it together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. Well, have you been keeping track with what's going on standing-wise?
I enjoy keeping up with it. Facebook and the Team Roping Journal. They do such a good job of helping you keep up to speed on things. And man, it seems like every week it's kind of back and forth at the top of the leaderboards. So.
Yeah, this is the last minute. This is it right now. And this is a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of these guys.
I think probably the thing that stands out to me the most right now is how many people at the top of the leaderboard have won more than past world champions have won throughout the entire year. Like, we've got a lot of people in six figures right now.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you got Dustin Esquiza with the Governor's Cup coming up that could possibly hit over 200,000. That we haven't seen payouts like that in the team roping ever that I know of. And, just the 15th, like right now, 15th is over, I think, 100,000. So 15th right now is, 101,000. Nelson Wyatt is 15th. So just team roping wise, last week was a great week. Chad Berger has done a great job with Mandan. Mandan was a great rodeo last week. Well, I tell you who hit last week and got himself to where he can kind of get a good night's sleep was Clay Smith.
Wow.
Clay Smith was 4-3, and I think that one, third or fourth, but it got him off the bubble. He was 14th. That shot him to 9th. So I think he's in. I think he is in.
That'd be good for his partner to finally
absolutely. Absolutely. That had to be, that's hard the last 2 years watching your partner rope at the NFR and not getting a rope. And so he's paid his dues for a long time. So yeah, I think he's in as well. But I talked to Hunter Cook this morning, and he said that him and Cody Snow were 11th, and they're still not. Like he said,
it's not secure.
Still like I got to cross my fingers. And they're 11th, and they've got one rodeo left, which is Stephenville.
Wow.
Andrew Ward has the Governor's Cup. Begay is 13th. He does not have the Governor's Cup. But he's got, so Begay, I think he told me he had Poway, San Bernardino, and Mona, I believe is what he told me he had left. And so he's at 105,000 with 13 rodeos. Rogers, I think I talked to Paul Eves. He said they just got San Bernardino. So they've got one left, and he's 13th. Or he's 14th, excuse me. Nelson, he's got a good shot. He's 15th, but he's got the Governor's Cup. Riley Minor, I talked to him. He's got Mona and San Bernardino left, so he's only got 2. But he's only a few thousand out if Nelly doesn't do any good. And then your guys in the backside right here that have got a chance, they're going to have to win. But Wyatt Bray's hanging in there at 20th with 92,000. He's got the Governor's Cup. And Kyle Dennison, he made the short round at the Puyallup at 23rd, and he's got the Governor's Cup. But he's 85. He's going to have to win quite a bit. But if Wyatt Bray can just keep hearing his name called all the way to the last Final Four.
Kind of secretly rooting for him too, just because of how much they're involved with your organization, and kind of the first year to really go hard like that. It'd be cool to see them make it.
They came to the house quite a bit and wrote before they left, and we shared quite a few text messages throughout the year and stuff. And he sends me almost every run, and you can't get the kid down. That's what I love. His attitude. His attitude is he's got the attitude of a lion, and he's got the size of a lion.
Not many people I look up to. He's taller than me.
Exactly. He's a big man. Yeah. So we go on the heel, and it looks like Caden Perfili's going to make his first one. He's in. Kobe Payne is 8th. So, yeah, he's gotten out of the chopping block. Buddy Hawkins is back, and Jonathan Torres. Jonathan is just trying to get his partner in. So he's roaming Nelson Wyatt. So he's just trying to get his partner in right now. But, yeah, Paul Lee's at 12th with 105,000. He's got 1 rodeo left. Coulter's got 3. We talked about him and Begay, the ones he had. Travis Graves, he has the Governor's Cup. Tanner Braden has the Governor's Cup. And J.C. Flake, I don't know how many rodeos he's got left. He's 16th with 101. Brady Minor, I think maybe just has 1. Patrick Smith, they're in a bad spot, in a tough spot, because I think the limited rodeos. So the 2 outsiders right now on the heel side, the big one everyone's watching for is Colin Von On at 21st with 95,000. And we dropped down to 23rd with Peyton Bray.
Wow.
Got the Governor's Cup, and they have San Bernardino. So
it's wild that those last 2 names you said are right on the outside, because all year long it seems like all I've been doing is seeing is them winning.
I know it.
So it just goes to show you how good everybody else is doing.
I know it. Von On and Andrew Ward, they won Reno. They won Kennewick, here at the end. They've roped good. But yeah, like you said, at this time of year, it's amazing how guys will just start lighting them up, and they're coming from every direction. And there's so many people that can rope. That's the other thing.
For sure.
But I tell you who the G of the week, in my opinion, was Tyler Wagasback. This stud gets hurt at Reno this spring, and he tears his bicep. And he gets into, I think he was somewhere in the 20s, ranked 20, I don't remember, 21st or back, something down there in the 20s. And he only had 1 shot to give himself a chance. He had to win Mandan.
Wow.
Does it. 3-4.
He's kind of always been a clutch guy.
He's been a clutch dude. How many
times has he won the world at the finals? Because he goes and performs so well.
In a clutch spot. Exactly. So that one was cool. I mean, you can't help not keep up with what he's got going on. So he's going to have all the rodeos he needs to the last week, but he didn't make the Governor's Cup. Another one that I talked to Tyler Pearson this morning as well. He's 12th, and he's got a few rodeos left too. I think he's got 4. I think he said he's got San Bernardino, Mona, Poway, and Stephenville. So,
and that's a guy that team ropes pretty good too.
He's a good roper. He's a good dude. Yeah, his kid ropes. Yeah, he's another avid team roper. But he said the guys that did make the Governor's Cup was Tristan Martin, who is, I think Tristan is 17th, and Justin Schaefer made the Governor's Cup, and he is 16th. So 2 of the bubble guys right there on the outside have both made the Governor's Cup. So he basically said, man, Monday. He said, I'm looking forward to Monday.
I bet.
Like a lot of these guys are right now.
Well, last year the Governor's Cup kind of make or break a lot of people. And I like that it's called the Governor's Cup. You and I talked a little bit earlier about the governor of the Dakotas up there, like what she's doing. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, look at the opportunity that's come up there between Mandan and up there in Sioux Falls. South Dakota during the COVID was one of the few places we got to go to because she does such a good job with her state. And that's pretty cool. That is also sponsored by Cinch, and that Jessica Waller, they said, is big props to her on what she is getting done up there. You know, they bring in the best stock. Like they hand pick them.
Wow.
I talked to Driggers this morning. You know, I think he went through 80 head of steers and got down to 24.
Nice.
So they're running a good set in the first round and a different set in the second round. So he's doing a good job because those little buildings, it didn't take long for them steers to start melting off pretty fast. So he's got a good set in the first and second rounds. And then after that, they'll pick, I think what they usually do for the final 8 is pick the medium, whatever they do, they try to make sure it's a little bit stronger, but they try to make sure that they're level, like they're straight, they're the same type of steer.
Yeah,
you know, they got 24 to choose from, so that should be pretty easy.
An environment
and then
like
the final
this, the cow
4
taking you out of the herd,
right?
It's no good,
right? And then the final 4, those are the fillets. Those are the ones that are just good. They leave good and they're right there. That way, the Driggers does such a good job. He's such a sharp dude, but he knows roping and he knows how to produce things, and he's got a business mind. But you know, when you keep those good ones at the final 4, the goal is to
put on a good show.
Put on a good show.
Yeah,
exactly right. Exactly. So yeah, it's gonna be good to watch that this weekend. I'm really excited because that's, like I say, this is like the last minute of football.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of big things left to go.
Well, the Cowboy Channel is like our ESPN now too. We get to watch real time highlights.
Yeah,
we haven't got to.
And it's been fun for me too because I mean, I always was a fan. You know, growing up, and
sure,
you know, now I get to be one as well. So, but yeah, a lot of big stuff going on in the country right now. You know, one, it's an election year, but you know, another thing right now is interest rates. So interest rates, I have read that they have went up 11 times just in the last 6 months. They say that's never happened before. And that the rates haven't lowered in 4.5 years since March of 2020. And right now, finally, they just lowered by 0.5 point.
Well, I can tell you when they tripled, and it was August of 2022 because that's when life changed in my way of life. And the last 2 years now, since then, it has been very different in the real estate world with a lot of new challenges. And so this 0.5 point cut that you're talking about that came in last week was a breath of fresh air for us for sure.
And then I've also read, too, another chance possibly to drop another 0.25 point maybe in November next month.
Absolutely. So
what does all this mean? You know, what dictates the interest rates, mortgage rates? You know, there's a lot of wild crap that usually happens during election year as well. And what does all this kind of have to do with some of those things?
Well, so the Fed or Federal Reserve is supposed to be an independent body from the government. And so we like to all think that it's influenced by elections, but just watching it as closely as I have, you know, for the last 6 months to a year, it's really tied to what's going on in the economy with inflation. And inflation has been rampant. You know, if you've gone and bought groceries lately or fuel or feed or anything, the prices are up. If you've paid your taxes here lately, property tax, everything, insurance, everything is through the roof, and that's tied directly to inflation. And so the whole purpose of them going up on the rates was to try to drive down inflation because it was just getting to the point where everybody's getting priced out of everything to where it's getting difficult just to live. And so what we have been slowly seeing over the last 2 years is the price of homes kept going up and up and up and up and up with low interest rates and with COVID and everything that was going on that created this monsoon of real estate sales. Whenever the interest rates tripled, everything started tapering off and sales started slowing down. And we saw the peak of the market. And so slowly you're seeing valuations and what homes are selling for coming down. And we're starting to slowly see more inventory coming in. And so what the Fed has been watching so closely is seeing that inflation rate come down. And it's this delicate balance of, do we cut it too soon and run the risk of everything inflating more, or do we wait too long to the point where we create a recession because we've waited too long to cut them, and now the recovery time is going to take longer? And so I feel like that's what they've been trying to accomplish and why they went ahead and did 0.5 point, because we were all under the impression that back this summer in July, they were going to go ahead and cut it 0.25 point and then wait till this time to cut it 0.25 point again. Well, they didn't cut it last time because they were trying to get a little bit more inflation out of it. So when they did a half a point, man, that's very aggressive by most people's perspectives. And as you mentioned, by the end of the year, we might even see another quarter point. So that has an effect, not just on home buyers, getting a mortgage, but also on anybody borrowing on commercial loan, anybody that's trying to do any type of investing or opening a business or doing any type of loaning at all. It'll even make a difference on what your car payment interest rate's going to be if you're buying a new car. I mean, so many different things that's going to affect it.
Do you feel like any of this stuff made inflation slow down?
Any of the interest rates being held higher for so long?
Because, man, it seemed like we never got a break.
Yeah.
Everything's high. Like you said, insurance is still high, through the roof. Groceries, all those things you talked about, man, I never seen a real control and getting that done.
Well, from the real estate perspective, what I can point out is sales before the interest rates went up were getting out of control. Because I'd go on a listing appointment and meet with someone, and everybody wanted 100,000 more than what I felt like the comp showed what we were going to sell it for. Because everybody wants more and more and more, which we all get. We all want more. Well, then you go to list that home and you're already listing it for more. And then you have someone that just sold a home for more, and they have a lot of equity and they have a lot of cash and they see what they want, and it's scarcity and you have competition. And so someone else comes in and pays cash or gets financing and pays cash over the appraised value of something. And so all of a sudden you're driving up comps. And every time something sells for more than what it should have sold for, it's driving up the comparables for other properties like it. And so it justifies the prices going higher and higher and higher. Well, there's a point where that's not sustainable anymore, where it doesn't matter where your wealth level is at. It's going to get to the point where you're pricing everybody out of the market. And so that's what I have seen higher interest rates do, is slow that down and get back more to what I would call a normal market, to where you don't have people fighting each other over properties. You can have a conversation and you can find middle ground, something that a seller can live with and something that a buyer can live with. And that's where I hope with interest rates coming down that we'll stay at, because we need normal for a while.
How much of this too is, do you think, like being here in Texas, this is a hot spot for a lot of people wanting to come here, especially in our industry, because this is a hot spot. This is where upper level ropers and things like that, like this is the place, this is the hot spot for that. This is where the opportunity is at. Absolutely. So there's a lot of, it seems like, need to come to, or the desire to come to Texas.
Well, politics do play a role into things, and having a different perspective here and tax structures being different here has certainly brought a lot of people from each coast to Texas. And I've worked with more people from the East Coast and West Coast, like California, over the last 2 or 3 years than ever before. Certainly seeing a lot of people move to this area and looking for a new start. We're also seeing a lot of new businesses. I mean, we've seen Tesla come here,
Yep.
A lot of Amazon distribution coming here. I mean, go down a long list of companies that have moved here. Joe Rogan, he's moved here to Austin. I mean, a lot of different people are making choices to go to different areas just because of tax structures alone.
And freedom.
Freedom.
A lot more freedom here.
Well, one of the first questions that I'll get a lot of times from a California person is, hey, am I going to get hated on here if I fly my Trump flag in my yard? Like, no, you might get supported here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
The opposite would happen. So it's also interesting too. And like I say, that for me, this is just interesting to understand, but I thought it was wild that this is how little I know about this, is when the interest rates dropped, then the stock market dipped.
Yep.
So how does that play a role?
So the treasury yield is, or I say that backwards. So the Fed and the interest rates are tied to treasury yield and the bond market. And so much of those play off of each other. And so when you see a drop in one, it's usually like the bond market had a drop, the interest rates come down as a result of that. And long-term plays are based upon interest rates. And so you take a government-backed mortgage like an FHA or a VA loan, those are being sold as big package deals over the long term to big-time hedge fund investors. and they are hedging their bets based upon the yield that they're getting back off of it. So while it's been tough for us end users, well, the person that's buying up this big bulk of mortgages, they're making more money off of the interest rates being higher. So when the interest rates go down, it's less desirable to them because the return is going down with it. Does that make sense?
Because that's one of the things I've been curious about too, is like with these interest rates going down, does that mean mortgages? Will some of the mortgage rates go down?
Absolutely. And I'm already seeing that.
You are?
So we saw a dip in the stock market about 30 days ago. And as a result, immediately we saw about a quarter to a half a point drop in mortgage interest rates. And in that 1 week span, I was so busy I couldn't see straight. It was like everybody that had been holding their breath called all of a sudden at once. And it was like 7 to 10 days of nonstop showing, listings that had been sitting, sold overnight. So we just closed all of those. So it's like, man, we've been very closing heavy right now from the last 30 days from when they dropped. So my guess is now we're seeing that now. We're going to have a lot more stuff under contract right now. Like we talked earlier, I showed 10 properties yesterday. In between meetings, booking more today, just the phone's ringing because people are seeing rates come down. I've seen 2 different 5% interest rate pre-approvals over the last 30 days. I haven't seen 5% in 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
So that's what everybody has said for a long time is we ever get consistently back to 5, well, you better hold on because it's about to get busy.
Because is it like right now when you see the rates go down, will that drive the price of housing higher?
It certainly could. And so I think that's the delicate balance right now is not getting ourselves back into the same position that we were in before. There's still a shortage of homes. And so what I'm hoping is as sales pick up, new home construction is going to pick back up to add inventory so that it will help keep prices steady.
So the dropping rate, you're hoping that the spur of the housing and the supply will drive up. And because it seems like the affordability remains a challenge, right? With being able to, because with everything going up, everyone's wages have still stayed the same.
Absolutely.
And that's what's been tricky. Because it's been a frustrating time, I think, really, too, is watching a lot of kids getting out of school, getting married, and the dream of being able to get into a home right now is almost depleting a lot of them because of just affordability and where everything's at.
Yeah, the average price for a starter home now is not what it was whenever I bought my first home. That's for sure.
Yeah, because I think it said home prices have surged 50% since 2020. And basically, it's far outpacing income growth.
Well, so not just the price of homes is up, but, there's 4 parts to every payment, right? So there's your principal that you're paying back that you bought the property, your interest rate, which is up. So those 2 parts are both up, the price of the home, the interest rate, your property taxes, and your insurance. Those are your escrow, the other 2 parts. Well, it used to be a long time ago, the appraisal district was not as aggressive and up to speed as they are now. It used to be whenever I'd go on a listing appointment, I'd meet with someone, they'd be like, yeah, I'm probably be good with just selling it what my house is appraised for on the taxes. And I'm like, no, it's worth much more than that. That's just what they have you assessed at. It used to be the appraisal district didn't keep up with the current market and market value. And now, man, they're on top of it. If a home sells, they're wanting to get a copy of that deed that's recorded and know what it's sold for, and they're going to bring up the value of that home. And so now the amount of taxes from the seller to the buyer just went up to catch up to what the buyer just paid for that home. And then your insurance also being up. So all 4 parts are up, which ultimately makes your payment higher.
Yeah, I think Brandon Carroll said the other day that I think housing insurance or homeowners insurance, I think was up 60% in Texas. Wow.
Hey, thank goodness we still have insurance on his podcast. Last time he was saying they're leaving states like California.
States. Yeah, that's crazy. So you've done such a good job with your company and how you built this, and because just even to be able to stay alive in the last, I would say 3.5 years, at least 2 has been a challenge. And so you've done a great job with it. But how did you get it started? You're the owner and the broker of Oak Ash Realty. So excuse my ignorance, but I know what owner means, but say broker. So what does that mean to be a broker?
So being the broker, I had to go first become a real estate agent. So I started out for 11 years working for Keller Williams out of Fort Worth and got the time and the experience and mentoring under other people. And then there's two different routes to become a broker. You can go to an obscene amount of real estate classes that would take forever, or you can go to get a bachelor's degree. And so I went back later in life and put myself through school and actually graduated from Tarleton with a bachelor's in business administration. And getting that degree pushed me over the hump, coupled with my real estate experience in years. And you have to have sold so much real estate and you have to document it all. And once you've done it all, then you can go test for your broker's license. And so once I got my broker's license in 2020, that's when my wife and I decided to go out on our own and start our own real estate company in 2020, which was kind of scary at the time because that was literally in the midst of a complete shutdown and everything that was going on in COVID. But it turned out to be a real blessing for us to go do our own deal.
So when did you say you got started? Was it right around 2020?
So that's when we opened our brokerage was in 2020. Yes, sir.
But I will say one thing. The pause was there, but then after that, the floodgates came, huh?
Oh, man. Yeah. So it was just a lot of scary times because at the time, my wife owned a hair salon that she had owned and operated for like 10 years. And the city came by and literally knocked on our door and said, no more operating. If you do, we're going to cite you. And so it's like we had to close the doors, but the bills didn't stop.
That was it's so maddening to look back at now. Especially here in Texas, I mean, I get it. There was a scare, but like, God, that was so maddening, man. I mean, this was something the government did. Mm-hmm. This is tyranny to them. I mean, and you look back at it now and it's a lot of things that are,
there's
leaking
a lot of
out.
Unknowns that we didn't know.
It was then.
Was so scary,
for sure. And then to look back at it now and like I say, it's amazing what happens during election years and shut the whole world down. And it was a maddening time, but man, talk about bouncing back though, because that's when California got real out of control with what they had going on with their restrictions over there, which opened the floodgate for a lot of guys heading to Texas.
And you're correct. I think that's when we really started seeing a mass migration, unlike anything we had seen since the Dust Bowl. You remember your history of the Dust Bowl. It's like they over-tilled and worked middle America to the point where crops couldn't keep up. And if we had any droughts, then all of a sudden dust is blowing everywhere. Well, everybody migrates to California to, a better climate, and they've got fruit farming going on. And man, all of a sudden everybody floods to California. And now it's like the opposite. Everybody's moving back to middle America, fleeing the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It, like say, Joe Rogan and a handful of however many people, Elon Musk moving his stuff over here. What do you think is the main attraction to Texas? It's easy for me to say from my industry because what pulled me down here, because I always kind of went with the trends, when I was a young kid. Once I got out of high school, I was looking to see where they were open the most, and so then when I had the opportunity, that was Arizona because it was coming from California. Most of the team roping originated from California. Leo Camarillo's, right. Some of your best guys, all that stuff was California grown. Mm-hmm. Well, then it moved over to Arizona. That was kind of the opportunity there because of the weather, location. And so when I got when I was in college, that's what migrated me down there was because of the roping. Well, then when I graduated from college, then it was slowly migrating to Texas. Right. Houston was starting to have team roping. Austin was starting to have team roping. San Angelo. Right. Some of the rodeos were now, because for a lot of kids that don't know, when I was in college, they didn't have team roping at a lot of the big rodeos. And so that started happening right about the time I got my card in 1998. And so that was kind of right around that era. Well, then everybody started slowly migrating towards Texas. And so team roping was an easy fit. That's where, the big ropings were, the wildfire roping was, the George Strait, some of the best roping in the world, Wendy Ryan, now we got the Spicer Grip, now Cody Johnson's fixing to have a roping next month.
The Lone Star here in
the Lone Star shootout, you can go down well, then also not only that, the numbered ropings, the amount of numbered ropings here is just amazing. So in our industry, I definitely see the appeal, but like, say businesses moving here, say like Joe Rogan, guys like that, what is the appeal you feel like for Texas?
Well, I think you said it's the opportunity. I think that anybody that has an entrepreneurial spirit, there's, and I tell my wife all the time, like, man, I would have thrived in the go west young man environment, whenever you had this untamed wilderness. And I think that's what a lot of people long for, is those unfettered opportunities. And while Texas is a great big state, there's just so much opportunity for growth and development. I mean, if you've driven around the Metroplex at all, you've seen how many subdivisions that are going in and how much each area is growing so much. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of growth going on, but we're also just very, very cognizant of trying to remove regulation here, trying to have incentives in place. A lot of the cities I see around here will work with organizations to come in and do tax abatements or incentives to work with companies to encourage them to come here, where you might be feeling privileged to get to go into, a city in California. They're just going to be happy to have you there and not really do much to incentivize you. But here, there's a lot of incentives. I know with the tax on, we're not double taxed here like you would be in other states. You've lived in other states. I'm sure you can speak on that, but just the less taxation, a lot of opportunity, I think, is what is driving the move.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of businesses, this is a very business savvy, like you said, and welcomes it. How cool is that going to be having, Tesla and I think SpaceX? Is there some stuff headed this way too out of there? All I know is he closed quite a few things in California and heading this way. And so he has enough businesses that I can't remember exactly what all he's heading this way, but any of it's good. It's all good.
Yeah, I might end up seeing X or Twitter here
too.
Yeah,
I think maybe that's what it might have been too. But
well, he's not in Brazil right now. They kicked him out of Brazil. Did you hear about that?
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
This whole thing's going wild right now. It really is. It's very concerning. But one of the things that it seems like that was hard in the last couple of years was making it at being a realtor. I think it said in 2023 that 47% of realtors only sold one house.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't making no living. And you can't keep track of like unemployment in real estate because it's 1099. So, if you're not making it, it's not like you're filing for unemployment or anything like that. You're basically just finding something else to go do. But that was kind of the average, is what I read, was 47% only sold one house. And they say that whoever can save the most money, because, every 2 years kind of goes, there's going to be a tide. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you can roll and the tide comes in, and when it comes back out and things like that, where for a lot of people it went out. So the guys that are able to, basically survive it, well, you survived it. Not only survived it, you survived it very well.
Thank you. It's not just been real estate people. It's everybody involved in the real estate industry. Like, we've seen a pretty mass exodus, not just in real estate agents, but in title people, mortgage people, insurance people. Like, just the same people we worked with 2 years ago may not be around anymore for those reasons. And a lot of people have had to tighten up their belt and make adjustments. And so to your point, those were scary times whenever August hit and the interest rates went up so quickly. It was like it went from the tap being on to someone turned it off overnight. And when you're used to steady sales and a steady income, and like all of a sudden overnight, it just stops, man, it's intimidating. And so, from August to the end of that year in 2022, I was like, man, we may have to go find another line of work, because it just the shock that went through the industry, just people quit buying. And I think there was still just such a shortage of homes and people needing to do something. Thankfully, in February of that last year, so I had about 15 listings just sitting from August through February, and just a lot of inventory on the ground, and a lot of people behind me like, hey, we need to get this sold. What we need to do to figure that. So it's a lot of pressure. And thankfully that February, the floodgate kind of opened up a little bit, and there wasn't because there was a drop in interest rates. It was just people that had been holding their breath all winter all of a sudden needed to do something. And so we kind of saw a surge in that February, and that kind of helped sustain us. And so, man, that drought from August to February, just living on savings, thank goodness that we had that. But man, it really makes you start thinking, because you're like, man, if I'm going to survive this, we're going to have to find ways to get creative and change our mindset and pivot and So we really just started focusing on what can we do to get steady income coming in regularly. And something I had always wanted to get involved with was property management. And so during that time, we started managing properties. We had already had our own rental properties and had worked a lot with investors, but we hadn't really taken on the role of being that advocate on their behalf. And so we started doing that. And one of the neat things about that is most brokerages don't offer property management, but yet you need to be a real estate agent to put it on the MLS and be able to do the things that a property manager does. But most people don't want that headache. And so instead of going out and marketing to the public, we started marketing to other realtors. And we'd be like, hey, you have people call you all the time wanting to have somebody manage property for them. You don't offer it. What if you send them to us? And in return, if they ever decided to buy or sell, we would honor that they were your client and we'll send them back to you to buy or sell. And it's like, man, once other realtors got wind of the fact that we would truly honor that and we wouldn't poach their client from them. And that was one of our number one referral sources with other people, was other realtors sending us business. And so that really went to taking off and just compounding overnight. And so that's been great to help us get by. Also, when interest rates went up, borrowing to go and buy went down, but anybody that was sitting on cash, and you were in a pretty good position because homes were now sitting on the market longer, land was sitting. And so we just really started focusing on the investor side of things. And then just because of my background, also just a lot of experience in development consulting, we started doing a lot of development consulting. And so it was during that time whenever we started the process of going and buying 80 acres of land in Cleburne with a client and helping them go through all the entitlements on that to get the property subdivided and platted and make sure it had the water and go through all that. So, I mean, it's taken now 3 years from the time we started that process to get to this point, and we're now building the first home on it. So just a lot of pivoting by offering development consulting services, doing the property management, and then something else that just didn't slow down as much in the middle of higher interest rates was luxury, higher end farm and ranch properties, luxury properties in town. Because when you get above conventional loan limits, most of those purchases are cash anyways. They aren't dependent upon interest rates or borrowing. They go and pay cash for things. And so just really working hard on getting out and being involved in that part of the industry. And so all of that coupled together, I think, is what really helped us survive that period and thrive in it. Like the last 2 years have been some of our best 2 years in business as a result of that. Now, I've had to work 3 times as hard during that time for those same type of results, but it's been very rewarding and very thankful for the people that put their trust in us.
Well, with this year being an election year, what is your thoughts that say Kamala is our president? Where do you think things go if things pivot in that direction? Or I would say remain in that direction, because she's just basically coming off of one administration and leading it now.
I guess the biggest thing that I wish people would take a look at is, if you haven't liked the last 4 years, why would you like the next 4 years under the same type of administration?
With her policies, what do you think is it going to look like if she gets in?
Well, some of the things that we're hearing that she would be continuing on from the current administration that they're working on to put into place is taxing you on unrealized gains. And so for the
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So like the average person that owns a home is not having to pay income tax on that property. They might be paying property tax, but if they were to sell that home, as long as they'd lived there, the IRS says as long as you've lived there for 2 years, you're not going to have to pay capital gains on that property. And if an investor buys a property and flips it and sells it within 2 years, they are paying capital gains. And so that's expected and that's factored in.
That's realized gain.
That's realized gains. So unrealized gains would be, let's say over the course of a year, your home goes up $40,000 in value. And the tax appraisal district sees that, documents it. What we're hearing is with her administration, people are going to have to start paying taxes on those unrealized gains. And so not only is it challenging to pay for everything else, but now whenever you go to do your taxes, you're going to be having to pay on something that you weren't expecting to be paying on.
That you already own.
That you already own.
You're already making payments on it. Already paying taxes on it. Property taxes.
But on the flip side of things,
so like, what would that do? What would that do to homeowners?
Would be devastating, especially if you weren't planning for it. But if you are planning for it, then that means that you're cutting from somewhere else. You're taking that out of your budget and not spending that on something else for sure.
Because, I mean, for a lot of people, they're just barely making ends meet. So in my opinion, that just pulls homes away from the way I'm seeing it, the way you're explaining it to me.
Well,
pretty close to that.
What I feel like is those type of decisions is what's continuing to take away from the middle class. The divide between the haves and the have-nots continues to grow. Whereas that was one of our biggest pride things that we had in America was the middle class. That's what so many people were striving for, was you didn't necessarily have to be a 1%er, but if you could get to the middle class, that meant not necessarily smooth sailing, but that you were going to be able to enjoy a lot of things just because you were living in America. And decisions like that, I think, are making it tougher to be able to realize and be able to enjoy that dream.
What is she had a talking point the other day on something on maybe like a $25,000 towards a house or something like that. Do you remember what talking point you had on that? What did all that mean?
That they were going to put some type of incentive in place that if you were getting a government back loan, like a VA or an FHA loan, that they were going to have like a $25,000 rebate that would go to you to apply towards the purchase of your home, which sounds great. If it helps bring down the purchase price of the home, you're being able to apply that towards it until that next year that it goes up in $25,000 in value, and then you're having to pay unrealized gains on it.
So a lot of this stuff that feel like it has a whole lot of traction.
It's a bait. Well, my question is, where's the $25,000 going to come from? From us, the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
where people think it's free. Anytime you hear the word, well, it's free money. No. Somebody worked their ass off to be able to provide free things for people. So it's not free. Now, God willing, he stays alive. And, I'm a Trump fan. There's no one's going to question that on anybody that's listening to my podcast. If you don't like him, I understand. There's definitely some rough tracks to it. There's some, I'll go ahead and bash on him for just a second. For one, not sure why he had to go after Taylor Swift. Unnecessary on Twitter the other day. Like that, that was silly. Going after Joe Rogan. So silly. Those are independent votes. There's some things where I see people say that the Twitter, if you just stay off Twitter, like, I understand what a lot of people are talking about because I love him. I think he's great, but yeah, there's times you're like, oh man, he didn't need to go that route.
That's right.
And he's done that, and he's repeatedly going to keep doing it because I don't think he can truly help himself. But that is who he is. But man, watching those 4 years and living through those 4 years to be able to be a billionaire with that much common sense and things that needed to be understood and things that needed to be done, and the fact that he had our back. And that crazy brass bald son of a gun, was not scared to go after the enemy, and they knew it.
Yeah.
And
he does. If he doesn't do anything else, he commands respect, especially from other countries.
Yeah. And so perfect. No, did I love Reagan? That guy. He was awesome. I have not got to movie. I haven't got to watch it yet. I'm wanting to. I really want to.
So somebody posted yesterday that go watch it, and the parallels from that time to where we are right now are overwhelming.
I highly recommend everyone watch it. I'm going to watch it. It's just a matter of making the time. I had to watch Transformers yesterday because we had a kid for his birthday, and I'm a Transformer fan too. But that's my next one. I'm definitely going to go watch Reagan.
Well, I haven't seen the movie yet. Love Reagan myself, but I tie it back to the times the most recent history that we have to be able to compare to what we're going through right now was the 80s. Because
I hope rock and roll music comes back because that was a great era.
Right. But it was the inflation, believe it or not, was as bad or worse than what it is right now. And
was that coming off of Jimmy Carter?
Yes. And I hear horror stories back then that there was 18% interest rates.
But the prices weren't as high.
Yeah, but also our incomes weren't as high. So it's like 18% was overwhelming back then. Man, thank goodness we didn't get to that.
Right. So if God willing, he is able to get in, what do you think things look like then?
Well, the number one thing I think it's going to do is it's going to garner confidence to get investors to get back out and moving and doing things. And specifically, like for us as builders, it's tough to go take the risk to go and build something that's going to cost you money every month that is sitting there not sold, for it to sit there and not sell. And so I think there's going to be a lot more moving on development to get inventory back, because that's one of the biggest drivers on pricing being where it is the shortage of inventory. And so more building would be great. And then we're also hearing that some of the things that him and his team are working on behind the scenes right now is to try to get incentives in place to incentivize building, to try to cut down on impact fees and permit fees and everything that goes with the construction of a home. The more that they can incentivize a builder to do that, to minimize the risk, the more willing they're going to be to go and build it. And the great thing about that is if you minimize their risk and their costs, well, the end user is going to see that as well. But if if somebody does go and build something and you're just killing them with fees, it can't come out of their bottom line, or they're not going to do it. It's going to be fed into the end price, and the person buying it's going to feel it.
That's interesting. Because there is a housing shortage, correct?
Definitely.
Yeah. Because that's what it seems like is real hard for right now with this administration, is the amount of first-time buyers just almost don't even feel like that's ever going to be a dream that's going to be reached, because it's just everything's priced so too far out of there. So renting is almost where everything's stepping in.
Yeah, and I mean, golly, if you've tried to rent something here lately, it costs you as much or more to rent something as it does to buy something. I mean, rents are high right now too.
Mm-hmm. So where do you think some of these places are? So, like in my opinion, if Trump does win, that's where I think the opportunity is going to come in so many different ways. And, what are places that you feel like are, like if you're from I think the South is good. I think the appealing places for a lot of the ropers, obviously in the wintertime, is Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is also great. Our weather's a little bit bipolar, but so many buildings and places to go to as far as roping and stuff. Oklahoma seems to be another strong red state, cheaper land, less taxes.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, and Florida seems to be another hot spot too, just for the same reasons as here, is opportunity and the taxation being in a better position.
And then what about people that, say summer homes and things like that, where, you're trying to get out of the heat now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you're trying to go north, say, so we talked about Christy Nome,
mm-hmm.
Up there in South Dakota. She's done a great job up there.
For sure.
What are some destinations you feel like getting out of the heat is a good spot to head to?
Well, Montana is something that's really been catching my eye here lately. I was hoping to ask your thoughts more about it when you were traveling around so much. What was your thoughts about Montana? Because it's just the nature and the landscape is something I'd certainly like to know more about.
Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful. I just didn't know if Montana is still, how it's being ran, if that's appealing that direction. But, oh, yeah, you're fly fishing, you're hunting. I mean, golly, it's just, you want to get right with nature. That's what a beautiful place. I know a lot of people have looked into Wyoming just in the fact of, wide open spaces and a lot of things that are very affordable tax-wise and stuff like that, and maybe North Dakota as well, but I know South Dakota for sure. But, yeah, Montana, wow, yeah. It's so beautiful, green grass and all the rivers and stuff and the fishing, and, yeah, it's a phenomenal place.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I was curious on a lot of the destinations or places where people go to get out of the summer heat.
Well, I think any place that's going to have the same type of environment that we're having here, I think people are going to want to go enjoy that as well. I mean, there's some other middle America states that may not be the case, where they have a little different perspective on that. But man, you can't say enough about the governor there in South Dakota, man. It's like every time you turn around, she's involved in something, and I can't imagine what her schedule looks like, because she's just everywhere, a lot of neat things going on there. Just the Governor's Cup that we talked about earlier. I mean, what a difference that's making for rodeo right now.
Mm-hmm. And their economy up there for the people coming out, coming up to it and watching it, for sure. Well, I will say one thing too, is when as far as people looking for a realtor. You've helped me out because our last purchases and things like that, I had found a for sale by an owner, and luckily we're out here roping, and you just heard me talking, and you're like, "Well, I'd take a look at it with you if you want, if you need help." And I'm calling everyone I know, trying to do this, winging it, like I normally do things. And luckily it was just kind of the right place, right time where you were over here with Bill roping and overheard me having a conversation, trying to get some things lined out. And so you helped me on the first one and didn't even charge me. And it was pretty cool because you stepped in and helped me with just things that I would have had no idea what to look for. Especially on the second one, I made sure the second time on them other two homes, like this time you're getting paid, like no more freebies, but like, you come in here because I want to have someone that understands, what code to look for, so what are a lot of the things like when you go, just little things like that, just need help me that like most people wouldn't even understand?
Well, that's, in my opinion, where you add your value in real estate is not just being up to speed on how contracts work and how to get a transaction from under contract to close, but knowing the ins and outs of different organizations, different counties, different cities, different areas, and it changes city by city and county by county. And so the more that someone in my role can be up to speed on that, or if you're not perfectly up to speed in that county, going and getting those answers. Unfortunately, what we see so many times is an uneducated investor or buyer going and buying something and not have done all their due diligence, and then they've got themselves in a mess because what they wanted to do, they're not able to do. And it's after they've bought it that they realize that. And so that's what I feel like is so important in our job, and what we do is being an advocate for that person buying that property. So like that specific one that you bought, it was just making sure you were able to do what you wanted to do on it, that the growth that you were wanting for it in the future, you were able to accommodate, that it had enough road frontage for future development, that it had the water there. And so a lot of different legwork working with the people in this area to make sure that we checked all those boxes before we ever had you buy it.
Well, and just having the inspectors on hand, knowing who to come in there and making sure everything was up to legit and everything going with the house and things like that. And then, things that I didn't even think of also was, ag exemptions. Those are big on saving money for taxes. Well, every county is different also on how much land, how many acres that is ag exemption qualified. And so, like I say, a lot of little things that was just like, wow, it was just fun watching you work. I was like, man, it's a good thing you showed up and wrote that day.
Well, that's one of the cool things about Erath County is they have opportunities for growth and development, and they're incentivizing it. Like in Erath County, you can have as low as 6 acres be ag exempt. That's not the case in every county going back towards the Metroplex. It's 10 acres or more. So that's a huge difference for people, because folks might have 8 acres or 9 acres and they're just under the threshold, but they're paying on all of it like normal. So yeah, it's a big deal out here.
Mm-hmm. Just little things too is, we've been trying to develop certain things in our business, but just for also other people that are looking into getting into rentals and stuff like that, like you've encouraged with the LLCs, your liabilities. So people that are looking into developing and getting rentals and things like that, what are some things you would recommend for them?
I think it helps to go and find, I don't just say real estate agent. I like to say an advocate, somebody that's really going to have your best interest in mind. That I feel like it really helps to find someone that doesn't just understand real estate, but also does the things that you're doing. And so instead of saying, hey, do as I say instead of as I do, it's someone that actually does it. And so I think it's important to find someone that is doing what you do. And so to your point, man, you're taking on a lot of personal liability when you put something in your personal name. And so if you ended up getting sued or something went awry, or even if you, God forbid, lost the property through bankruptcy or something like that, you're being personally liable for all those things. And so when you're personally liable, if somebody gets hurt on your property and they sue you, well, now potentially they've got a stake in your place that you've worked so hard for, or your assets, So that's why it's so important when you're going to start doing investing and having rental properties, or if you're going to be flipping properties, whatever it is that you're doing, to have a good limited liability company in place to be able to be a structure for that. I think it's also really important to have a really good tax consultant on your side so that you understand the implications of what you're doing and that you're preparing, whether it's going to be a long-term investment or a short-term investment. You can see all the different parts of what you're able to make monthly or on a return from a quick sale, but what are your tax implications on that? So it's so important to have all that in place also.
What about people that are wanting to leave their place down to their kids? There's so many taxes on that stuff as well, and passing things down from one generation to generation. What are some things you could help steer them in directions to where I've heard of some people that, deed it down to their kids in the wrong direction. They've almost had to sell the place to pay the inheritance tax, things like
Absolutely.
that. So what are some things you'd recommend for people that are looking into passing things down to their kids? So
having a good attorney to be able to go meet with regularly, to be able to do long-term planning, because in the beginning of your life as an entrepreneur and as an investor, you're working so hard to build it. In the second half, you're working so hard to hold on to it. And so I think it's important there's all different avenues that you can go, but a trust is probably the most common way to be able to get that put into place. And then having trustees in place and having planning in place. It's great to have a trust and something you work so hard to build, but may not be so great to just give it to your kid at 18 years old. Because I dang sure know that the 18-year-old me doesn't think like the 40-year-old me. And so just planning in place, like having a good person that you trust to be that trustee for you in the event of your untimely death, that somebody that that's going to be counsel to your children and to your heirs and who you're leaving it behind, is not just putting the structure in place, but having good people you can count on that are going to be watching out for your family.
So with all of your success and everything that you've done, what do you feel like how old are you now?
I'm 40 years old.
41
in November.
So where do you think in your career, one, was what was the changing point? And two, if you're going back to tell let's go at 25, because 25, it seems like, okay, now it seems like almost at 25, you kind of find out what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so what was the changing point? And if you was to go back and be 25 again, what would you tell yourself?
Well, a lot of our listeners aren't going to like this, but it would have been start focusing on business sooner and roping less back then, because it was all about rodeoing and roping back then. And I was completely consumed with it. But I think it really started with our mutual friend, Bill Force. I don't know if I've told you this story before, but, I high school rodeoed with Bill's daughters, and that's how I first got to know Bill. And later in life, once I had gotten married and was coming off rodeoing all the time, I was still very passionate about roping, and he and I would get together and practice some. And man, he had a beautiful place. And back then I didn't have anything. I had horses and I had a truck and trailer, and I'd newly married and nothing to show for it. And, Bill had at that time retired from the state police. He had retired from the military. He was currently Ross Perot's helicopter pilot. He was just doing so many magical things that I was just like, man, how did you get to this point to be able to have all this cool stuff? He had a beautiful place. He had a nice truck and trailer, had nice horses. He was getting to go and enjoy roping. Whether he won or lost, it was not going to financially break him if he didn't go win that weekend, And so I went and had a serious conversation with Bill, and I said, Bill, I want to know how I can get to where you are. Now, at the time, Bill's probably in his late 50s, early 60s, so there was a big time gap there, and I was wanting to get there right then. And he was like, Ryan, I'll tell you the answer, but you're not going to like it. And I said, well, I'm so desperate and I'm so hungry that I want to get there. He goes, quit roping and sell everything and start focusing on saving every dime that you can. And he might as well slap me upside the face, because the last thing I want to do is give up something that I was so passionate about. But at that time, that's what I needed to hear. And I had to have kind of a come to Jesus moment about really growing up and focusing on priorities. And so that's what me and my wife did. Like, we sold everything. And for a solid year, we didn't go out to dinner. We didn't go on vacation. We didn't go out with friends. We didn't charge anything. Like, we saved every dime we possibly could. And we sold our first little house, and then we're able to go and buy the ranch where we're at now. Now, it wasn't what it is now back then when we bought it, but man, we've spent the last 11 years building that place up to where it is. And during that time, man, I just really got serious about building something for the future. And it was right about that time when I got my real estate license. And man, we just really, really honed in on building something. And that advice from Bill allowed me to be able to come back to it later. Once I got my ducks in a row and, things were getting better financially, I was able to finally go and buy that big living quarters trailer that I never got to have. Best thing I ever had as a kid was a Capri camper, but I got to have that nice trailer and got to go buy some nice horses, and I got to go back and go compete again. And so until my son started school in 2019, from 2018 and 19, I got to go back and pro rodeo again. I was heading at the time and got to go to a lot of rodeos that I'd only got to dream about because I could support it now because I'd gotten myself where I needed to be financially. And so, man, I kind of got to get that out of my system because it's like I felt like I got cut short on my dream of rodeoing back then. But man, going to get my ducks in a row, man, I got to go back and we got to have a lot of fun. And thankfully, my wife was supportive of that. And our kids were little and they weren't in school yet. And so, man, every weekend we'd go and rodeo and enjoy that living quarters trailer. And so until my son started school, man, I got to go and be a kid again as an adult.
I would say that was probably one of the opportunities that I had was I was able to go chase my dreams to the full extent. I never, I got to retire on my terms, which was something I was very proud of. And the fact that we got to retire with all 10 fingers. That's always a good one as a team roper. But the fact that I was able to retire going out how I wanted to, roping better than I ever had, making the NFR, that was a big deal to me. And so that was one thing that when I decided when it was enough, it was real easy to there's one stage. Now it's time to move on to another one. And I would say probably one of the biggest pivot points, I think, for me was reading that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. That one was really a really good book that I read that really shifted the way I thought about things. And so as I was moving from rodeo and trying to be, learn the ways of an entrepreneur, you'd say that one was a great pivotal book for me. And I highly recommend anybody read that book, even if you're wanting to do business or not. It's still a good book and the way it was written and he did a good job of explaining different mindsets.
It's a mindset shift when you read that book.
What do you think was your book that you read that you felt like that one was a pivotal point?
So for me, one that really changed things from a business perspective, especially in real estate, was a book called Ninja Selling. And it has absolutely nothing to do with selling. It is about sales and real estate, but it's about adding value and solving problems for people. And so, those first 11 years that I had worked for Keller Williams selling real estate, all my success had come from just going and working hard and doing a good job for people. And then they would refer me and someone else would come. And it was kind of a slow grinding process. And it wasn't until I read that book and kind of had a different mindset shift that things really snowballed for us. And so what that book talks about is being a problem solver and adding value. There's so many different parts to it that it talks about, but that's what I took out of it is walking around every day with that being the forethought on your mind is, how do I go and solve a problem for someone or add value to their life? And sometimes that's something really simple and sometimes that's something that's very complex. But once you start to see the results from that, then it becomes addicting because the thing is like, I'm not a good salesman. I might be good at selling real estate, but I don't like being salesy. I don't like selling myself. I like to say to people, don't believe what I have to say. Just give me a chance and I'll prove it to you. And that's what I liked about that book is it's an opportunity to go look for chances to help people and add value to their life. And when you do that all the time, and you have to do it without expecting anything in return, because if there's an expectation, it doesn't work. Because if you're constantly like, well, I'm going to do this, and then in return, you're going to do this for me, well, you'll get disappointed a lot. But when you constantly have that mindset of being very giving and not expecting anything in return, it's amazing how the blessings come in return to you.
Yeah, it's truly biblical. That is really good. Yeah, I haven't read that book yet. I'd be interested in reading that one. I did purchase an app the other day, and it's a pretty cool app. I found it on Instagram the other day, and it's called Wiser.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like $89 a year. And you can, I think it kind of sums a lot of the books up for you, where you kind of get the generalization for like 20 or 30 minutes. It'll kind of sum the book up in chapter by chapter. And it's just almost looks like an endless amount of books. And so like when I'm working out, like I'll put something in on, whatever it is. I feel like, everyone, I think in order to reach the pinnacle and constantly keep evolving, you're always going to be seeking knowledge. I feel like,
Sure.
Whether it's leadership, whether it's, truly knowledge and certain, like for me was, because I wasn't real sure what I was going to do when I retired. I mean, I had a goal, and I had no idea my clinics were going to take off as much as they did. But, I didn't know if I was going to have to shift into something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so luckily I was able to survive within the industry that I know and love. And so I was very fortunate with that. But, you're still always growing. You're still trying to grow knowledge. And so there's so many things out there. But that was one of the things I just found the other day that I thought was really interesting, where you can get the sum of a book. And then, like you say, you can tell, like, man, this would be a book I'd love to read everything about. And
yeah.
So it was pretty good. We're just 20 minutes a day.
Have you tried it out yet?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on it.
What's been a good book that you enjoyed this synopsis
one
on?
of the ones, you say that because my Joe Bidenism pops out and I can't remember crap. But there was one that I really liked. Hopefully it'll pop up. Atomic Habits. That one was good. I like that one. How to Talk to Anyone.
Nice.
I like that one because I deal so much with the public, with clinics and things like that. And you're always dealing with different personalities.
Right.
And for me to become a good clinician, in my opinion, is you're going to have different personalities to know how to work with them, know how to present yourself, know how, what eye contact and, how are you presenting yourself body wise, or is your demeanor, all those little things. And then it also kind of talks too about when people are kind of acting a certain way, you can either almost fuel the fire, or there's things you can do and say that'll almost
temper it.
Yeah, you can set the temperature of the room. And so, yeah, there's a lot of little things like that don't naturally come to me. So it's good to be able to find knowledge that can get you in the direction. And I think in another way too is help become the person you really want to be. There's always going to be things that seems like it's a certain kind of, what was it Clay Cooper said one time? He said, there almost has to be a certain amount of insanity you have to strive for perfection, knowing you're never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so, these books and things like that, and knowledge that people have it's fun to be able to have these conversations where, what helped you get to these points, and because you're gaining knowledge that way. Well, iron sharpens iron.
Being uncomfortable all the time is a little crazy. And that's part of the growth is constantly have to be stepping out of your comfort zone. And that's very tough to do because that's why it's comfortable, right? It's because it's what you know. I think that's where I have found for me and other people that I study and try to be like is if they get comfortable, they're looking for a way to get uncomfortable again, to get outside their comfort zone, to stretch, to grow, to do new things, to get better, never settling for enough. And that will drive you crazy a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, man, I enjoyed the conversation. It was fun. It's fun to get to talk to you again because we've both been busy.
For sure.
There for a little while, we was able to communicate quite a bit, but then with your stuff taking off and my clinic's taking off, and then now my military, it's been hectic trying to get up. It's coming up, my military event. It's been great. It's been really good. It's all worth it at the end, but it's so much work to be able to put on a school, put on a rope and put on a gala, put on a fundraiser, a branding, which thank you guys for also too of being involved with this year, you and Michael. And, then we put on a rodeo at the end to basically, kick it off. But yeah, it's all there, but it's talk about stretching and growing you and not getting comfortable. That one keeps me going because I don't know nothing hardly about a gala. So we've been really trying to get that thing going because that's where we raise our money, where we can help more people and stuff. And so I totally get what you mean about the constantly stretching yourself out. You get a lot of growth and a lot of learning in those processes.
Well, you've got an all-star board that's over your deal. Like, man, if you go on Charlie's website and see the people that you get to hang out with, your board of directors, like, man, you got some pretty high-ranking folks in there. So
one of them we talked about, Bill Force. He's been the driving force of this thing for sure. And then Ken Bray, he's such a great man. Just integrity, and the amount of things that I've learned, how to handle business, how to handle situations, and he's been amazing. And Troy Applegate, he's same thing. I haven't been able to get to talk to him much too because he just keeps running the ladder up there at J.P. Morgan, and so now they got him in New York on something because he's just so dang qualified at what he does. And what I kept trying to talk him into is retiring so we could rope more. Right. And I'm kind of glad he did get to go be busy because I've been so busy. Well, hopefully we'll both slow down at the same time because I enjoyed having him out here roping.
Man,
and just
you want to talk about being able to talk finances at a high level. Like I get lost talking to him.
It was so fun, huh?
Yeah.
We've gotten think tanks, which some would call maybe a bottle of wine, but also it's also pretty cool in the fact of like just watching how those guys get creative. Yeah. Oh my gosh,
they're thinking at another level for sure.
It is. It's really cool. I learned things I never even knew I was capable of learning, being able to be around him. And then Lane Aiken, I'm really excited. I want to get him on the podcast as well because he was a former Texas Ranger. And he's the sheriff of Wise County. And so we're going into his territory. They're up there in Decatur at NRS. Well, that's where we're going to have our gala this year is up there in Decatur. So it's going to be fun to be able to see some of the people that he'll help us be able to kind of get up there.
One of the things that I liked about him last year is I think he was a guest at the branding and you had like a law enforcement officer down here from somewhere in the Northeast. And he was like, man, I'm really wanting to relocate to Texas. And your guy was like, you want a job? I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. A
lot of networking. Yeah. And one of the best networkers I know, Keith Mundy, he's on our board too, the president of American Hats. And
that guy's got some style.
I can't wait. I've been trying all summer to get up there and get him on a podcast.
You need to. I will listen to that one.
I really think that probably be this winter and I'll be able to get time to get up there because I haven't been to the factory yet. Just learning felts and things like that. There's way more to it than a guy thinks. And so, I'd love to get up there and get the tour and then sit down there and talk business with him too. Cause
man, I love just seeing his appearance all the time. He's such a sharp dressed guy all the time, just all business. I'd love to hear more of his story.
Yeah, we'll get that one for sure. But man, thanks a bunch for taking the time. Like I said, I know you're busy. And so how do we get a hold of you? If we're looking for, a place to rent, with your property managing, you're going to be able to help people that are looking to rent and take over some of the headaches of managing your own property as well, which I know fully about. And, looking to buy, like say, interest rates are coming down. So if you're looking for homes and you're heading to Texas, where do we find you?
Yeah, so our website is oakandashrealty.com. And then, of course, you can reach us on all of our different avenues on Facebook, Instagram. If you just type in Oak and Ash Realty or my name, Ryan Studdard, you'll be able to find us really quick. And just call my cell phone. Get a hold of me real quickly. That thing's like attached to me 24/7. I always tell people if I'm awake, I'll answer it.
Nice. Man, I can only imagine the batteries you must go through a day.
Have a charger around all the time.
Well, man, thanks for the intel, and man, thanks for everything you do for our military and the involvement you've had with that, and appreciate your friendship, and thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Charlie, too.